Hey y'all, welcome to my very first sewing tutorial. Thank you so much for joining in today. I am going to show you how to make this very festive holiday cover right in time for the holidays. It has an envelope closure and is very beginner friendly. Let's get started. Okay, the first thing that we need to do is either purchase a pillow form, they're also called pillow inserts, or you just need to know what size pillow that you plan on using for your pillowcase. Mine is 18 by 18 inches and I purchased it off of Amazon. We are going to add ½ inch of seam allowance to all the pieces that we sew today. So we are going to cut a square piece of fabric that is 19 by 19 inches, and this is going to be the front of your pillowcase. Here's mine. I did not piece this, I just quilted it. This is from like 1992, it's vintage fabric, and I'm going to show you really quickly how I quilted it. So I just did basting spray down a piece of batting and then just quilted the lines. However, feel free to choose whatever design you want, or you can use fabric from your stash. Now we are going to cut our back two pieces. They are going to be 19 by 13.5, and you can use the same fabric that you're using for the front, or you can use a different pattern design. It's whatever type of pillow cover that you're making. I just used the same pieces that I had for the front, and I quilted them the same way that I did the front. Now we are going to create our envelope opening. So with the wrong side of the fabric facing up, you're going to fold one long edge of each of the back rectangle pieces up 1 total inch. So to do that and to create a seamless finish, you're going to fold over ½ inch and then fold over another ½ inch. So you're going to have a total of 1 inch folded up. And you can eyeball this, you can measure it out, you can iron it, whichever you prefer. If you're using batting or a different type of material that's not cotton, just check your iron settings. But once you've got that folded over, you are just going to pin down that fold over, and then you're going to do this for both rectangle pieces. You're going to take them to your sewing machine and you are going to sew 1/8 of an inch along that line. This is what that looks like when it's finished, and you are going to do this with both of your rectangle pieces. Pillowcases do tend to get pulled on quite a bit because you're inserting a pillow or if you're taking it out, so I do recommend back stitching every time we go to the sewing machine. And our next step is going to be creating the ruffle. So there is a little bit of math to this. I do recommend downloading my free PDF that I've provided on my website, blatsoninc.com, or you can pause the screen in a moment and read those instructions. But essentially, we are going to cut 4 strips of fabric, each 5-inch tall by 72 long. You want to get about 144 total inches of fabric to create a nice full ruffle. Once you have those strips cut, we are going to place them right sides together, creating this like plus, and you are going to sew a diagonal line down the fabric. This is going to create a nice seamless loop. You're going to do this for all of your strips of fabric until they are all sewed together. And I'm pretty much showing you here why we're doing that. It is going to alleviate the bulk, and we are going to fold up the fabric like this, and this is where we're going to gather along that raw edge, and that's how your ruffle is going to be created. Okay, so one more time, we are going to place right sides of our fabric together and we are going to sew down this diagonal line. You can mark the diagonal line if you want to, if that makes you feel more comfortable, or you can just eyeball it. Once we're done sewing down the diagonal line, we are going to cut down the diagonal line. We're not going to cut the seam that we just created, but we're going to cut as close to the line as possible. Then you're going to fold this up. You can iron it or you can finger press it. You can open your seams or keep them closed. It's whichever you prefer, but you're going to do this with all of your strips of fabric until you have one continuous loop of fabric that we are going to use to create our ruffle with. Now you're going to set your sewing machine length to the longest stitch length possible, and you are going to sew down this edge twice. You are not going to backstitch at the beginning or the end. You can pull the thread so that you have a really long tail to the back of your machine, and you are going to sew down this line 1/4 inch, and then you're going to sew down it again another 1/4 inch. So you should have 2 rows of stitching against this raw edge here. Okay, now you're going to take one of those long thread tails that you just created. Like I said, it's very beneficial to make your thread tails very long. And you are going to gently pull on that thread tail. And this is going to create the gathering effect that is going to make your ruffle. And you can do a bunch of gathers, a little bit of gathers. I mean, it's really preference here. If you break a thread, you just need to go back to your sewing machine and essentially sew it again, and just do not backstitch at the beginning or the end of sewing this. It's kind of tedious at first. You just want to be really gentle with your thread. But here we have our ruffle. We've got our two back pieces and our front piece. So now we are going to take our front piece, the big square piece that we made that's 19 by 19, and we are going to kind of figure out how you want your ruffle. You can kind of play around with this. This part's pretty fun because it's, you know, how you want your ruffles to look. And you're just going to flip it over so that it's a raw edge by raw edge. And you're just going to pin that around the perimeter of that front facing piece of fabric. And when you get to a corner, you don't have to stress out about it too bad. I mean, you can line it up the best that you can, but pillowcases are not like a 90-degree angles. They're kind of rounded. So if you sew into your corner a little bit, it's going to be okay. You're not going to mess up your project. When you get this clipped all the way around the perimeter, you're going to take it to your sewing machine and you're going to stitch either a quarter or an eighth of an inch all the way around. And you're just going to want to stay as close to that raw edge as possible, but making sure that you catch all of the pieces of fabric. Then we are going to just place a few pins around the fabric, grabbing the ruffle, because we want to keep the ruffle out of the way when we place all of our fabric together. I do not want to stitch over any of my ruffled pieces. I just want to catch that raw edge. But I'm just pinning them down so that when we put our back pieces of fabric on top of this front facing piece of fabric, that the ruffles stay out of the way of the sewing machine, because I do not want to sew over the ruffles. I just want to catch that edge to sew everything in place. So you're going to take one of your back pieces, line it up right sides facing to the front facing piece of fabric, and you're just going to pin that all the way around, or clips. I personally like to use these clips a lot better than a ton of pins. Okay, once you have your first back piece lined up, you're just going to rotate it. And as you can see, the envelope edge that we created is in the middle. It is not against the raw edge. You do have to have that in the middle, and you're just going to take your other rectangle back piece and that envelope edge that we created, you're going to also have that in the middle, and it's just going to lay, it's going to overlap, and this is what creates that envelope opening for your pillow to go in and out of the pillowcase. And you are going to clip or pin that all the way around, and it will be overlapping, and that's completely fine. You want that overlap there in the middle. Now you're going to take this to your sewing machine, and we are going to stitch around the entire perimeter of this pillowcase at 1/2 inch. And when you get to your envelope opening right here, this is where it's going to be tugged on a lot by the pillow. You're going to want to backstitch over these, just kind of adding that durability, so that they don't rip apart when you insert your pillow. And this is what that looks like when it's all sewed up. Now I'm going to carefully cut my corners. I am not cutting any part of my seam. I just want to cut the outside area to kind of give these corners a good point when we flip it inside out. So just be careful, do not cut your seams, just carefully cut your corners off. I like to reach inside first and pull out the pins that we put in here just so I don't get pricked when I'm turning it right side out. But this is it. This is where the magic happens. You should be so proud of yourself. You just created a beautiful pillowcase. This is such a beginner-friendly, fun sewing craft, and it is so nice to gift these to people for the holidays. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. Please show me your pillowcases when they are finished. I can't wait to see everyone's.